Welcome everyone. It's great to have you all here. Today we at Alexander & Haberman are honored to be hosting Daniel Metcalf to present Top Cybersecurity Secrets. Daniel Metcalf is with Cyberfin. He is the geek of the company. And in his words, he has the best job in the company, which is to educate and integrate cybersecurity solutions for small to medium-sized businesses. Daniel has spent the past 20 years solving business challenges through technology and most recently, cybersecurity for insurance and financial services organizations like Alexander & Haberman. At the end of today's presentation, we will have an opportunity for Q&A, so be sure to stick around for that. Please submit your questions via the chat to hosts and panelists. As always, Alexander & Haberman does not practice in the specialties of its speakers, but welcomes them here to speak for the educational benefit of our clients, friends, and guests. Alexander & Haberman is a specialty firm focused on assisting with Medicare Advantage, Supplement, and Part D plans, as well as individual and family health insurance on and off exchange, and other benefits including dental, vision, and gap insurance. Now, to get us started with today's presentation, it is my honor to introduce Daniel Metcalf.
Thanks, Brittany. So happy to be here. I'm very honored to be working with everyone here and to take some time. At Cyberfin, one of our core values is knowledge is power. And like I mentioned, this is one of the most exciting parts of my job is that I get to come and educate small to medium-sized businesses about the top cyber crimes that are out there, more about the myths and facts and the best practices to protect you and your company from a cyber crime. Right now, the number one financial risk to any small to medium-sized business is cybercrime. Allianz came out with their list of financial risks for 2023, and cybercrime was on the top of that list. The number two was business interruption. Well, guess what the number one business interruption is? Cybercrime, or some cyber attack. And for the first time in the history of Allianz, they made cybercrime the number one financial risk to small businesses 2 years in a row. That being said, it also means that there's an opportunity for us to follow the best practices, to protect ourselves, and to find ways that we can, as a collective of small and medium-sized businesses, work on slowing down cyber crimes and doing the best we can in order to better the community and to protect ourselves. So how did we get there? We got here because over time, the enterprise level or larger organizations were the only ones that were seeing cybercrime as the large enough effects and from a monetary standpoint. Well, now small to medium-sized businesses are the actual businesses that are being attacked. They're the ones that are the main focus of the attackers. That and the fact that many nation states like North Korea, Russia, Ukraine, not all nation states are now the ones behind these attacks. And again, what used to go after government entities or larger organizations have now started to focus on the small to medium-sized businesses because they know that that's where the money is. Some of the other reasons why is because now we've been insuring small businesses for cyber liability and or for cyber crimes. We've been all over the news about how cybercrime is such a big deal and everybody's not protected. So what did the cyber criminals do? They started going after the small to medium-sized business because we did a really good job of marketing it for them. And it's not slowing down anytime soon. As you can see here on the graphic, where we started in 2018, look where we're going to be by 2027 as far in the world of trillions of dollars that are going to be stolen or what it's going to cost in order for us to be able to protect ourselves from the crimes and also what happens after a crime's already been committed. And again, we talked about why is this higher than ever? Well, the conflict in the Ukraine and a lot of the wider geopolitical tensions are only making the landscape more and more complicated, and it's only making it more necessary for those countries to be able to use our dollars in order to fund their events. Ransomware attacks are continuing to go up in frequency. The total losses of a ransomware attack, which used to be a little bit smaller, have now gotten into catastrophic level. The average cost of a data breach is at an all-time high. Attackers are no longer just, like I said before, restricted to larger companies. They're using the SMB markets as a way to try to continue with those efforts. And then the criminals have just found ways, now even in 2023, to breach standard multi-factor authentication, or what you know is like the two-factor authentication, where you get that notification on your cell phone and your email that you have to put in this code. They've already started to find ways around that two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So these attacks aren't just slowing down because of a few things we're putting in place. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. The other reason why is there's always three competing areas for the tech attention in any organization, big or small. It's compliance, productivity, and security. And although it looks like it should be a nice civil conversation looking like this, because they're always arguing over what should we put our dollars and where should we put our efforts, it tends to look a little bit more like this. Everyone's trying to fight for the dollars, the time, the energy, whatever they might be, right? I need to be more productive. Well, but we still need to worry about security. What are we doing about compliance? And then while they're having that argument, the bad guys already come in and found a way inside the door, is already started to breach that organization while those conversations are still going. I mentioned before, I won't go into too deeply, but again, I'm one of the co-founders of CyberFin. We provide cybersecurity services for small to medium businesses and organizations, a lot in the financial services industry. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I really enjoy finding ways and educating with organizations to better their position when it comes to solving problems through technology. That all being said, our agenda today and what I hope to give you the most amount of value in your time, which I already know is valuable, is to teach you a little more about the top cyber crimes that are going on today, the 3 myths to cyber risks, and 3 best practices that you can take away today to protect you and your organization from cyber crimes and fines that could possibly even lose your business or your agency. So let's start with the top cyber crimes today. According to statistics, many of you that are, at least 60% of you that are with us today, have seen a screen like this or similar to a screen like this. This is a screen that pops up on your computer and it tells you, we have got your files, we've encrypted them, and if you don't give us enough Bitcoin in the amount of time that guns up on this clock, we are going to destroy those files so that you can never get them back again. But if you give us Bitcoin, we'll give you the encryption code, and then you put that code in and you can get your files back. This type of crime is called ransomware, and it is, in 2022, it was the #1 crime to small to medium-sized businesses for when it came to the total dollars lost for those organizations, and bankrupted many of them. This here is a very complicated and dangerous crime where we've literally seen businesses go out of business and no longer in existence because of a crime like ransomware. Well, here's some of the reasons. Do you know how to buy a Bitcoin? A lot of our customers up to this point don't even know how to buy a Bitcoin, right? So the time and the clock just keeps ticking. They don't have somebody they can go to in order to find out or how to remediate themselves from an attack like this. But don't worry, they've got a nice little piece of customer service. If you look on the screen here, it's got an about a Bitcoin, how to buy a Bitcoin, contact us. I mean, they've gotten really good into the customer service world. But while you're doing all that and trying to do the investigation, they're sitting there waiting for you to get desperate enough to pay them the money, right? And the cyber liability insurance up to this point has a way to be able to say, oh, we'll pay up to so much in ransom. And they know that because what happens? They show you on the screen that, hey, here's your cyber liability policy. It looks like you can pay up to this amount of dollars in order for me to give you the key back, right? So this became a very severe crime in 2022 and is continuing on its way in 2023. But that's not all. The next largest crime that's going on in 2023 is business email compromise. And how it works is they work very, very hard to find a way to get credentials to your or one of your employees' email addresses. Whether that's through Outlook or through Google Workspace, they are going to try to compromise your email credentials or some type of credentials within your organization and then end up being in the middle, right? So they create a copy, if you will, of your email or your credentials so that as you're getting responses, what appears to be going through normal channels, they're sitting in the middle, actually directing where those conversations could lead. They are even directing where the data might go. And so they can even start to act as they are you or that employee or that person and try to get others to give them information or to give them money is typically what happens in order to, and keep it going until you figure it out. Or even worse, they might send out a mass email to all your contacts trying to get the next person to give them their credentials, because you never know what those credentials could lead. In the insurance space, those credentials could lead to a quoting software. It could lead to a CRM system, something where they can gather all the data and then from there use that to sell it on the dark web or somewhere else to make money. The next is fund-to-fund transfer. You might have even seen some of these emails yourself. Hey, I need you, we've changed the way we're taking payments. Can you send a wire over here, right? Or they might take your wire number and change it by a couple numbers and get it themselves and be able to get paid that way and divert the money in a different way. And that's basically what it is. Or try to get in the middle between a Venmo purchase, right? As an example, where they might be right in the middle and you think you're Venmoing the end person, but at the end, you're actually siphoning some of the dollars out as it's going to that other person. That's what a fund-to-fund transfer. So anytime that they're acting as a way to get the money towards them instead of where it's supposed to go. And the last and the most dangerous now for a lot of organizations that keep personal identifiable information or credit card information or health information is the data breach. And the reason why the data breach is so important is they can use that as extortion towards your business, saying, hey, I have all this data, and if you don't want me selling it to China, or you don't want me selling it to the dark web, or you don't want me to tell the compliance area, say like you're under a compliance of one of the government agencies, if you don't want me to tell them that I have all this information, give me $50,000 in Bitcoin, right? Or send me $50,000 to this wire within the next couple of hours, and I won't send it out, right? In many instances, you think that they're going to be on the up and up, but remember, they're criminals, right? So they probably left a back door into your organization. Yes, you paid them the money, but they left themselves a nice little back door where they're going to go do it again. It's called double extortion. These are the type of crimes that are going on in this order of severity up to this point. Something like this could be something as simple or as low as just a couple $1,000s for your organization. But in many instances, it's much higher than that. And we'll go to what some of the aftermath looks like. So those are the top cyber crimes. Let's briefly talk about how are they actually executing on these cyber crimes. I just love technology, and the way that is, when we talk about technology, it always has these really fancy words or out there words like phishing and social engineering and malware and insider threats. We'll talk about them in a little depth, and we'll try to bring it down to just what the typical educational level should be, right? So let's talk about phishing. It's just with a PH instead of an F, but it means the same thing. They're phishing for information. The bad guys out there using email, they're using text messages, they're using social media messaging sites, anything they can to try to fish for information, right? Or fish for credentials. Here's an example you see on the screen here, which is faking a name and replicating a name like My University. And they're saying, hey, look, if you want to renew your myuniversity.com subscription, please click on this link and reset your credentials and then put your payment information in there. You might be busy. Someone in your office is really, really busy. You're not paying attention. You're like, oh, yeah, it's probably something I'm supposed to be renewing. Click on the button, the link, you fill out some information. Next thing you know, you just send somebody a couple $100 a month and you didn't even know it. It just keeps showing up on your credit card statement and you didn't even know it. That's a very simple version. Some of them, they're not even that looking for money. Sometimes the phishing is just to see if you would be able to, if you have a My University account, I know it's a fake one, but let's say it might have a Netflix or an Outlook or a O365 or Microsoft or a Hulu account, something like that, because then they can use that against you further by coming up with what that scheme might be like. Because if you don't have a Hulu account, well, can you really be tricked, right? It's like, yeah, good one, I don't have Hulu, right? So that's how phishing works. Spear phishing, and the reason why I put this in here is because this is a very popular way. Spear phishing is they're specifically using somebody that they already know, like a CEO of an organization, or someone with a leadership title, or somebody specific that's very public. They're using that so that, or somebody that you already might be working with, that they're going to try to replicate, or they might have, like in this situation, they've already gotten into Timothy's email address. They have their email credentials. They're using information that Timothy has sent to people in the past, like, hey, here's an RFP, right? If your salesperson got here's an RFP, would you want to get it? They're more likely to want to click on it and do something on that RFP because it came from somebody they know, like Timothy. So that's what spear phishing is, and it's a very dangerous and very effective way for criminals to be able to find a way to breach into your system. Social engineering. Now, this starts to get a little bit out there, but they are actually looking at LinkedIn to see who tags you. They're looking to see who you interact with. They're going on Facebook and seeing who you interact with on Facebook. They might try an email address over and over and over again in different combinations to say that they're coming from you with a little, hey, I sent it from my iPhone, like you actually should know this person. They're sending you text messages as somebody else, right? That's social engineering. So they might find out the name, create a fake account with their name on it, start texting you like, hey, this is my new phone number. And then you'll start a dialogue. And then they'll ask you for something like, hey, can you send me $100, $1,000 worth of gift cards from Target, something like that effect. And next thing you know, you're out of $1,000 worth of gift cards, right? Because yes, you mean they actually go through all that work? Definitely going to go through all that work because they wouldn't be making millions of dollars if it wasn't worth it, right? They wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't worth millions of dollars to them. That's exactly how it works. That's social engineering. We get into malware. Just like it sounds, it means bad software. Just make it simple, right? They send some bad software, or they send you some bad type of file that's going to go against you, and they're going to use it against you, whether that's to lock up your computer or to steal data from you, or it might just sit in the background and listen and learn from you. This is an example where it looks like it's coming from human resources from somewhere, and hey, here's your healthcare audit survey that you need to fill out. Your HR person needs to fill out, or your controller. Here's some information, go ahead and download this Word document. All of a sudden you open it up and yes, it has a bunch of information, and you fill it all out, but in the background, it puts some code in the back of your computer, and it's gonna go search through all your files and try to encrypt your files and shut down all those files and encrypt it, and then all of a sudden you're gonna see that Bitcoin screen I showed earlier. 48% of all malware attacks come from a Microsoft Office file. So, always, if you get a Word document, a PowerPoint, an Excel, and you're not quite sure you're supposed to be getting, and you're not quite sure the person that's sending to you, always find a different method to confirm with them that you were supposed to receive it. Whether it's through a call, a text message, yes. We might have to call somebody and say, did you mean to send it to me? Right? That's the best way we're going to keep ourselves from bad guys getting in through software. There's other types of bad software that you should always be aware of. Adware, especially when it came to during COVID and everybody started going home and sending their employees home, or forced to, this became an easy way, an easy target, the remote employee, for a way for them to get into their system. So adware, you go on Google Play and all of a sudden, you download some type of software, try to make your job easier, their job easier, and all of a sudden it was a fake software. And now you get this pop-up showing up over and over and over again for an ad, and you don't know why it's there, and you keep trying to hit the X for it to go away, but all you're doing is really telling them more and more information, or it's sitting in the background doing something. Keyboard loggers, that's literally looking on the keyboard. It's as you're typing on your keyboard, it's logging to see if there's anything that's repeating over and over again, because what happens if it's repeating over and over again? It usually means that someone's logging a password, right? So they're going to try to isolate that, and then they can see what you're logging a password. And they're going to go try it on a bunch of sites that they've been watching you go to this entire time. Trojan software is just what it looks like. It looks like a normal software you got off of Google Play, or a normal one you got from the Chrome extension store. But instead, it's actually a Trojan horse sitting in the background, and it's just waiting for the right moment to go and lock up your network, or lock up your system or your files. And the reason why I added mobile spyware here is because everybody thinks that Apple's done a really good job talking about security, and they just think that the phone by itself is really secure, right? Well, that doesn't mean that they can't put mobile spyware on your device, right? Just like you can use Siri to make your lives more efficient. Well, they have a form of bad guy Siri that's on the other side of it, who's listening to you, trying to learn things or find out passwords or whatever it might be, and trying to spy through your camera or whatever it is. They can turn it on. So always be careful of the applications that you're allowing to be put on your business phones, or you're allowing even for yourself if you use a personal phone for business too. And the last execution, and what seems to be up to this point the largest and most often that we hear of reasons that you get attacked, is by the insider itself. Now, sometimes that insider is actually there to try and take you down. So that's the malicious insider, where you've actually hired an employee or a partner or somebody who is going to go in there and misuse their credentials specifically, or misuse what they have to try to take down your business. It really happens. Sometimes it's an inside agent, where you hired somebody that you didn't know was an agent working for a ransomware company. It happens. Or they're working for a business email compromise company. Or there are such things as ransomware as a service. It's kind of crazy, but it's a true business. You might hire somebody on Indeed or Upwork or one of those, or Fiverr, or something, one of those companies that it looks like they're legit, but they're actually there working for a criminal organization. Sometimes it's just an emotional employee who's really upset, and we've seen it happen. We had a client who had a very upset employee who went and signed them up for 1,000 different, with their email address, 1,000 different porn sites or different malicious sites like that. So then all of a sudden they're now under attack, and it's taking down their email over and over and over again, and allows the door for the bad guy to get in. Sometimes it's just a reckless employee. We know as business owners, or I'm sure if you're a business owner out there, I'm sure you've never clicked on a bad link, right? But you have employees who might be reckless at that particular time, or they're just overwhelmed. They're working many hours. There's a lot going on. There's supply chain issues, all those other things, and they're just tired, or they're just being reckless at that particular moment, and they click on the wrong thing. Then you also have to look at your vendors, right? We all want to believe that our vendors are doing the best that they possibly can, but sometimes third-party vendors aren't. They could be reckless, they could be emotional, they could be an inside agent, they could be any one of these two. So we always have to pay attention and make sure we're watching our vendors at that same time, because they too could drive you to a breach. So yes, you say to yourself, you know what, I'm strong, I've been educating myself, I know what I'm doing, I don't click on anything, but you don't know the other ways. If you have employees or vendors, you don't know what you're up against as far as the criminals go. All right, so let's talk about the brass tacks when it comes to cybercrime. On average, a breach for a small to medium-sized business costs $149,000 in North America. I don't know about you, but there's not a lot of small businesses that I know that can go without $149,000 at any given time and still operate their small to medium-sized business, or at least it's going to make a dent, where they might not be able to do sales or marketing or something else to be able to do it. 60% of all small to medium-sized businesses that get breached go out of business within 6 months. That's a scary number, and that's a short amount of time. The average ransomware payment went from $7,600 in 2018 to $165,500 in 2021. That's a big jump, 2,000%. How did it happen? Cyber liability started covering ransomware payments. So now they know that, hey, if I commit ransomware, I'm going to get paid. Right? And a very specific amount, obviously that must be the amount that they're covered. And the average downtime of a ransomware attack, and honestly any of the attacks that we've talked about today, is an average of being down for 22 days. Again, I don't know too many businesses that can be down a couple of hours, let alone maybe a couple of days, but 22 days, that's a really long time. And that's what the average time is. And now you can see why the dollars that it costs, the amount of time that it takes, is the reason why 60% of those businesses are no longer with us after 6 months. All right, enough about the crimes and all the things that are going on. Let's talk about the myths of cyber risk and what's really going on in cyber. Myth number one, the size of the business matters. You've heard me kind of already talk about it over and over again, but it's true. Fact is, small and medium-sized businesses are now the prime target. The reason why they're the prime target is you have access to sensitive information. You need to move that sensitive information in order to do business and in order to get paid. So they know you'll do whatever it takes to move that sensitive data from wherever it is to somewhere else in order to get paid. That's why the small and medium-sized businesses are now under attack, because they know that data is worth dollars to them. So they're trying everything they can to try to get access to that data. They also know that you most likely have access to large organizations. We know that large organizations have started hiring small businesses in order to do business together, right, or do more instead of employees in some instances, or having their own staff. Well, they know that you probably have access to a larger organization. So that if they can get into yours, they know that then they can act as you or with some of your credentials in order to take down the bigger organizations where they're going to get the big payday. They also know that it's been more difficult for small to medium-sized businesses to get the security infrastructure in place to really protect from all those attacks that I talked about earlier. And they also know that this is where the money is. Criminals like ROI just like any other business, right? Where are they going to get their return on investment? And they've realized now that they can run multiple attacks all at once, in the millions of that, to that matter, and they know that this is where they now can start to make the millions, right? To where it's actually running the entire North Korean nuclear missile program. We can talk about a scary story. There was a manufacturing organization that was up for sale. There had already been breached by a business email compromise attack, and that person that was acting in the middle had been sitting there for months. As it was reading through their emails, it noticed that they were up for sale, and there's all this information going on in the background saying that was talking about, hey, we need this for the sale to go through, or we need this information. So it just kept sitting back there reading all their emails. Yes, it was reading all their emails, kind of seeing what's going on. Then they found out the date that they were going to be doing this acquisition. So they waited till the announcement that came out that the manufacturing organization had been acquired by a bigger company. A couple days after that, when they know everybody was done, excited, and there was going to be a lack of paying attention during the transition, they executed their attack and shut down the entire manufacturing facility. It took the new owners $1.2 million just to get that manufacturer back up and running again. And they're down for many, many days. That manufacturer was not very big. And so that is an opportunity where, yes, you think about, well, what would anybody want with my little manufacturing company, right? This is exactly what they're looking for, because they're just finding other ways to try to siphon money out of your business. And this is one that happened. By the way, like I said, that malware had been placed on that computer about 6 months prior to the attack actually happening. And it happened over a weekend, because they also know that there's times when the businesses aren't necessarily paying attention and when they can create panic, right? When nobody's there. Second myth, the cloud protects me. Everybody said, oh, we're going to just move everything to the cloud. And that'll be my solution to, because then they can't get anything on my computer. Well, technically, when you go to the cloud, you're actually bringing the threat to the businesses that rely on it. So by you moving to the cloud, and depending on how you do it, you might have just taken the malicious software and put it in the cloud, where you're not only going to affect just that one computer at that particular time of files, now you might be infecting them all. And not only that, you might be infecting other businesses that are sharing that same cloud, because not everybody, in order to keep the cost down, you share that cloud amongst multiple different businesses. So you might have just brought the bad guy into multiple businesses all at once. So that's what they're actually looking for, is to see who's doing what in the cloud, and they have their own way of being able to shut you down or to steal information or whatever it might be, because they know you're going to the cloud. Isn't that a turn of events? There's many different ways where you can then become the mule, if you will, to larger organizations by using the cloud. Myth number 3, and finally, if I just choose the right tools and technology, if I just go and I buy the best tools ever, that's the best place to start. And the fact is that the tools are technology is only good at the person that's going to manage it, right? If it's too complex, or if it's too much, or even if it's really trying to protect something that you really don't operate under, you might have just bought a really expensive toy. That doesn't mean it's actually going to protect you. So it has to be within what you can manage it. So we start with, okay, what am I able to manage? What am I able to, or the people in my organization or whoever I outsource this to, what do I really need in order to be able to protect myself? Because if you take on a very robust technology, you're actually going to leave gaps, because you're not able to manage all the things that happen with it, right? So, and the bad guy knows they can attack you where you have those gaps. And really, cybersecurity has become an always-on activity. So just throwing in a bunch of tools and technology and walking away from it, they're constantly changing their attacks, and they're constantly attacking you. So if you just take your eye off it for a little bit, or someone takes their eye off it, that could be when the bad guy actually strikes. And we know that as business owners and IT professionals, they didn't get in the business to become security guards, right? They got in the business to run a business, to help others, or to be IT professionals, to deal with technology, not necessarily security, right? So just having these tools and technology doesn't mean just because they've dealt with technology, they know how these work, and they know how to manage it. So be careful when you look at tools and technology, and rather find a way that I can manage this all the time. All right. So now we've talked about what are the crimes and how do they execute against it. We've talked about the myths when it comes to cybersecurity. Let's talk about, give you some value back on what can I do? What are the 3 best practices that I can operate under in order to lower the risk as a small to medium business of a crime? Before I get too deep into it and get real technical, I want to talk about an industry who's had to worry about safety and security since the minute the first vehicle ended up on the rutted roads, right? And that's the auto industry. And the auto industry has really started to take the shift from from securing the vehicle, right, and making the vehicle as strong as possible, to going and securing each of the individuals inside that vehicle, from the drivers to the passengers, not only to severely lower the risk of a crash or an accident, but also the overall impact when a crash happens. And the reason why they've had to pay attention for so long is the less drivers there are, that means that there's less cars being sold. So not only is it just about, hey, goodwill, but they want to make sure that people still see auto travel as a way to get from A to B, right? So how they've done that has gone from what we call infrastructure security to user-based layered protection for the individuals, is by thinking through how can we put a bubble around every single person inside that car. right? And how do we make the car stronger? Because if we make everybody the same as is strong on the inside, it makes the collective stronger. And if everybody follows the same protocol on the road, all the other automakers do that, that means we're making everybody on the road safer and secure. And when there is an accident, we're lowering the catastrophe level of those accidents. So how it all works is, as a layered protection from the user, think about just as simple as you all have key fobs when you try to get in your car now, right? So it's something you have and something you know, and you have to have it in order to get in the door, and then you have to put your foot on the pedal and press the button to make the car go, right? That's multi-factor authentication. It's no different than two-factor authentication, right? Something you know, something you have to make sure that the identity is you and to make something work. That's the same thing. So if you think to yourself, okay, what's the first layer I could do to my organization? Put in the key fob into my company, right? Something I know, something I have, multi-factor authentication, right? You got to get the text, you got to get the little app on your phone, and you got to, every time you put in your credentials, you got to press a button or put in a code. I mean, I know it's a pain, but it's very simple, and it's a way to slow down the bad guy. Now, driver assistant technology. That's no different, right, than what we call endpoint protection. So if you think about it, I'm driving down the road and I creep over to the line too much, and all of a sudden my seat rumbles. I've got all these different bells and whistles and things going off as I'm going down the superhighway, right? So they're specifically creating for me an opportunity where I might be fallible and I might be leaving gaps going on in my driving. It's helping me make sure that I'm seeing all those areas that might be a concern. That's no different than what we call endpoint protection on your computer. We put software on your computer that tells you, hey, that file's not really supposed to be there. Hey, did you mean for all these files to be going to Russia at this particular moment? Do you do business in South Africa? Like, that's what the endpoint protection does on the vehicle. It's no different. So now I have the, hey, are you supposed to be there, and is this really you? Multi-factor authentication. Hey, is this document really supposed to be on your computer? And they're talking to each other. That's layered security based on the user, right? That's not just the device itself. That's the person interacting with that device or with that data. Then we have things like airbags, right? So now we're in an accident and we have airbags. That's no different than, like, say, email threat protection or something to that effect, where, hey, if I got in an accident, now what happens, right? Do I have somebody that's, something that's slowing the impact down and making sure that I don't get as hurt? That's people sitting on the backside making sure we understand, okay, can we lower that impact? That's layered protection as it goes along. And then, yeah, we want to make sure that we have crumpled glass, and we want to make sure that, or crumpled bodies, and we have this certain shattered glass, and all those different things that are going to make it so that the impact goes down. And that's all layered together. They don't just have one or just the other. They put them all together in the vehicle now and around the user to make it stronger. And we all have that extra appendage now called our mobile phone, our smartphone, and they've even come up with ways that the car talks to you or you can talk to it in order to handle your mobile phone and make your hands free, right? Because they know if you have one hand on a phone and not on the steering wheel and you're not paying attention, you could create an accident, right? So they've even come up with ways, and that's no different. Your mobile phone within your business, that phone that you've given, that you let the employee use personally for business, is going to be the most dangerous tool in your organization for a breach. And then education, education, education. Auto industry has helped start to drive some laws and some rules and some education to make sure that, I mean, my 15-year-old's going through driver's ed right now. I don't think I'd pass. They've done such a great job of, extending the education, more hours, more different types of training and education, because the more we know what we're looking for, the better it is. Same thing with your business. If you're not doing some type of employee awareness training, some type of cybersecurity training, all we can do by arming them with more knowledge is going to make it more powerful. But as long as we can tell them, hey, this is why you have multi-factor authentication. Hey, this is why we use endpoint protection. As part of it, not just what to look for, but why we're doing this as an organization, they're going to start to look for things as they go along, like, maybe I shouldn't wire this right now. Or, I should pick up the phone and make sure this is the Excel document that's supposed to be written. Knowledge is power from that standpoint of it. So the practice number one is mind the gaps. Think of your organization and where those gaps in your security might be, and layer it in and think about, how can I put protection around each one of my users and my employees? Right? And that's what we've done here at Cyberfin. Is that's what we started to look at, was how do we work with small to medium-sized businesses where we can, down to the one person, put their own cybersecurity around each individual and layer it together. Multi-factor authentication, having a virtual private network where it's actually your business's virtual private network. Email threat protection. That way, if one thing fails, if the multi-factor authentication fails, at least you have your own virtual internet highway that's going down that only you have, that only a cybersecurity expert can look at and make sure that they're going to the right places. Let's just say the VPN fails. Well, at least you have email threat protection or endpoint protection, something on your computer that's alerting you if something bad were to happen. That way, either way, if you've got these layers, it might lower the impact. But many times if the bad guy finds out that you have multi-layers of protection, they're just going to walk away and go find somebody else that doesn't. I always say, think of a cul-de-sac or a circle, depending on where you're from. If there's one house that's got the garage door open, they have all the lights off, and the next one down the street has lights that pop on when they walk by it, they've got a ring, maybe they have an ADT sign sitting out front. Which one do you think the bad guy's going to go after, right? The wide open garage. So don't let your business be the wide open garage. All right, I've harped on that enough. The second best practice is ignorance is a bad defense. And this happens in two ways. One, the ignorance of, guess what? Winter's already here. They're already going after these small to medium-sized businesses. Don't say and put your head in the sand and say, look, I don't have to do it anymore. I didn't know that they're going after small to medium-sized businesses, right? There isn't anything for my business for them to attack. That's no longer true. There's many ways that they can use you and your business to drive them money, okay? Number two is state governments, federal governments, every three-letter acronym of government agencies out there, or even maybe even the business association works with, they're all coming up with their own rules and they're all coming up with their own fines and compliance that you have to follow up with. And it's super confusing. But they've also said, well, too bad. If you don't follow these things and a consumer turns you in and tells me that they got your information from you, they're coming after you whether you like it or not. And you can't use the defense, well, I didn't know that it was a rule, or I didn't know I was supposed to do something. They've already said, we've been telling you since 2017, just watch the news. We can't let this happen anymore, right? And we can't police it. So all those different rules really boil down to two things. And this is what I want you to walk away with. If you think to yourself, as long as I've got reasonable cybersecurity in place, and two, I report anytime I think there might be a breach to a government agency or to my consumers, I've now followed every law that's out there, right? So say it again. Reasonable cybersecurity. Remember the multi-layers, right? Reasonable cybersecurity, and I know who to report to if there's a breach. As long as you do those two things, you're safe. So as long as the consumer doesn't reach the person that I've been breached before you do, you're usually in a pretty good spot. So you also have to ask yourself, what does reasonable cybersecurity look like? Well, you have to be able to identify what data that I'm taking in and whether there's a breach or not. Can I protect that data? Can I detect if some data's been compromised? Can I respond if that data's been compromised? And can I recover the data at any moment in time or within a reasonable amount of time? If you just think of these 5 things, and there's been a great organization called NIST that provide this for us, if you start thinking through that, in that standpoint, following this graphic, you'll be in the reasonable cybersecurity space. And if you want to know some of the 3-letter and 4-letter acronyms out there that actually have their own laws or own regulations, FTC, SEC, HIPAA, IRS, ABA, NAIC, right? I can keep naming them all off. They've all now come up with their own compliance, but just remember those 2 rules and you'll fall through. So this isn't just for HIPAA anymore. All right, best practice number 3. Be less attractive to criminals. Criminals are lazy. And I've talked about it. It's all about return on investment, right? Criminals are lazy. So just make your company or your agency look less attractive to crime. How do you make your agency look or company look less attractive to crime? Well, start with requiring complex passwords, and I brought it up before, multi-factor authentication. If you create a combination between a complex password and multi-factor authentication, you can severely slow down them getting your credentials, right? Because that's what they're looking for, right? Especially in small businesses, you giving up some credentials that gets them into something else. If you look on the graphic here, if you had 14 years, a number, 14 characters, a number, an upper and lowercase letter with just a symbol in it, it'll take them 200 million years before they could crack the code, right? So you say to yourself, all right, Daniel, well, 14 characters is really long, right? Well, even if you look at 12 characters on the same thing, it's going to take them 400 years, right? Or 34,000 years according to this stat. So if that's the case, my suggestion to you is come up with one of your favorite sayings, right? Or one of your favorite song lyrics, or one of your favorite passages in a poem that would equal up to about 12 characters with some letters and numbers and characters in it. That's easy for you to remember, but don't ever talk about it on Facebook, or don't ever talk about it anywhere on LinkedIn, because some of you might have seen those memes where they're asking you, hey, what's your favorite pet? That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out what your secret password or your secret answers are to your password. The second is to maintain a separation of business and personal devices and activities. I know, since we went to COVID, right, from COVID, and we always want to give our employees and our business as much flexibility and productivity as possible. But personal devices, using personal devices without cybersecurity on it, number one, that business run, but also by just letting them use their personal devices, you are leaving big gaps in your organization. And that's what the bad guys really trying to find, that gap between, okay, what is there when they're in the office versus what does it look like when they're at home working or their home office or remote? What does it look like and how can I infiltrate that and take that down, right? So spend the extra dollars, send them a work phone, send them a work tablet, send them a work laptop or desktop computer, and make sure that you have your own business cybersecurity on it that you can monitor and that you can manage. And if you just make the business, whether it's in an office or at home, look exactly the same, it's easier for you to manage and it's easier to make sure that's protected. And also, if you're still using at Gmail, at Hotmail, at Outlook, or whatever email addresses, you can't put the necessary cybersecurity, and your email is your number one vulnerability, by the way. You cannot put the necessary protections in place to be able to remediate or to block somebody from using that email address, right? So my first thing I'd say is if you don't have a professional domain or have not used an email address that ends in at abccompany.com, and you have, and you're not putting security software in your email, you are leaving huge holes out there. It's not hard to get a domain. It's not difficult to set up O365 or Outlook for your computer or Google Workspace. And if you need any help, we can talk to Alexander Haberman and get in touch with me, and I'll help you put that in place. All right, so here's a recap. Top secrets that you can take home right now. User-based layer security provides the best protection. Put bubbles around each of the users, each of the employees, not just the company. Actively manage to one cybersecurity standard. We talked about NIST. It's one you could look up, but really just think of these two things standards. Do I have reasonable cybersecurity in place, and can I respond to an attack, right? Is there a way that do I know who to respond to? And then lastly, just put in multi-factor authentication. It's not that hard. Microsoft Authenticate, Google Authenticate, and create a complex password. It's at least 12 characters with some numbers and letters, or with some numbers and characters in it, will make your business look less attractive to any cyber criminals. All right, and with that said, this is question and answer time.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah.
We are excited to have you, as with all of our experts, join us. If you had any questions, for those watching, if you had any questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen and send them to hosts and panelists. So wonderful to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So we actually already have a few questions that have come through.
Good.
The first one is, what are your thoughts on using a password manager? And what is the impact of a breach at a password manager company?
Sure. For those that may have not have heard of a famous breach that just happened, LastPass is a password manager, and they've recently been breached. And what happened in that breach was they took all those password management lockers and they downloaded them. And now they're working with thousands of computers trying to figure out what your master password was, right? So here's what I say. Password managers are great because at least you're managing all the passwords. Now, I would say have a central one for your business. So don't let everybody else have their own LastPass, rely on them.
Sure.
Have one centrally, because then you're going to control those passwords. And two, don't make your master password less than 12 characters without characters in it, right? And anytime you hear anything about and don't rely on these password managements as I can just walk away from it, as we talked about before, right? Just go ahead and make sure that you're constantly changing your master password and looking for, hey, did any of these get breached? Is there anything I should worry about? Keep your eye open for what might already be going on those password managers.
Okay. So this question kind of relates. What is the recommended password design, and are passphrases appropriate? Passphrases.
Yeah, I mean, the design to me is, like I said, if you can come up with a number of letters and characters and numbers that are out there over 12, you're in really good, you're really going to slow down the bad guy, right? Passphrases, it's okay, like saying, hey, after so much time, I think is what they're referring to. If there's so much time, then they have to reset their password. Yes, I'd constantly be able to do that. But even better, if you work with a password manager and they don't even have to know their password, right? Or that they can get in and they can use the password generator for them, that's even better because now you're in control and you're not relying on the end user knowing their password.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's if you really want to lock it down from that side. We've worked with some organizations that's really been beneficial for them until they give out the master password.
Hopefully never.
Yeah, hopefully never, but it's happened.
Gosh, okay.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit more about I think you called it user-based layered security approach you mentioned, and how does this apply to, say, an insurance agency like ours or other small businesses?
Sure. So yeah, we'll do it as an insurance agency. So layered user-based security is you have 5 employees that work for your insurance agency, right? Some of them work in the office and some of them work at home, or they want to be in hybrid, might be remote, right? Might be using a virtual professional somewhere in the Philippines or something. By doing that, we can put user-based layered security around each of those individuals wherever they're at. And how it's layered is they all require to have multi-factor authentication. With our software suite that we've put together, it includes the VPN, the virtual private network, the email threat protection, right? The email that's filtering all the emails, making sure that they're legitimate emails, right? And then also the endpoint protection, all talking to each other. That's the layers, right? So if one fails, the other one can pick it up. Okay. And the key to it is being managed, right? So when you have that layered security, somebody's looking and managing it, taking tickets or looking into things, or alerts go off and somebody's automatically going and remediating that issue no matter where that person is. So if you think about the user base, that's 5 people that I just mentioned, all have the same cybersecurity, right? Nothing disparate, and it's all talking to each other. Well, no matter where they are, you can protect them wherever they are. And so it looks like you've got one big bubble around your organization, but it's actually 5 small bubbles that are creating it stronger.
Okay. You talked about at home, having like the ADT sign.
Yeah.
So you want to be unattractive to cyber criminals. What is something that can be like the ADT sign for businesses?
Yeah, multi-factor authentication right off the bat is the first thing that you can use to turn on
So it's not necessarily a sign, but it's
right. It's a sign to them because when they try to take if they've found a way to get your credentials and they put them in, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well now you got to put in the secret code, right? Or you got to press the button on your phone, or even better, we have these. They have these bio sticks where you can put a stick on the device and they have to put their thumb on it for them to be able to get in the work computer, right? If they don't have access to that, they can't get in, right? So that will slow them down. Doesn't mean that it's going to stop them, but that'll slow them down.
Depends on how persistent they are, I
suppose. Right. Another way of putting that ADT sign out is the email threat protection that we use. It puts everything into that isn't supposed to be there into a quarantine report, right? So if you're not able to respond to that email really fast, if it's going to rewrite the links like ours does, and it's going to stop them from going to bad websites, right, that are malicious. The bad guy's going to know, okay, I've already sent all these emails. It's not getting through. I'm not seeing any traffic coming to this page, any analytics coming to this page. Obviously, they have something in place. I'm going to move on to somebody else.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up question to that, multi-factor authentication.
It's easy to say for you too, right?
Apparently, yeah.
That's why everybody says MFA. Right?
Yeah, and that's actually what was typed. I should have just. But MFA, text-based versus email versus physical security. Like a USB.
Yep.
What is the preferred method?
Okay, just everybody has their opinion. Mine is I think the bio stick or the actual physical device is the most effective, right? Something you have, something you know. That's where that key fob really becomes in a car becomes very needed. But I know that's not easy for every organization to do. So the next one would be the application on the phone, not the text message, or not sending it to an email. It actually has to go to an application that you manage on your phone. So like Duo is one that's a third party that you can manage as a business, right? Making sure that, hey, was that supposed to happen? But again, other powerful ones are Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticate. Those ones are ones that you can feel more comfortable with, and disable the, hey, just put in this code, right? Text message. Make sure that they actually have to press the button and be able to do it. Because getting the codes is something that they can intercept.
And what happens if you, say, lose that, USB stick or whatever?
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it? Well, the good thing is I'd get more than one, right?
Okay.
So
you can
I
have
get
a backup.
more than one. You can have a backup. Get more than one. Put them in a safety. I know safety deposit boxes. Put them in a safety deposit box, a safe, whatever it might be. Again, it just depends on how. If you're using if you have healthcare information that you collect or credit card information, things that are very, very valuable, it's worth it, right? Any intellectual property that you might have, right? China's always looking for another item that they can steal, right? So if it's something important in your business, putting it in a safety deposit box and having a backup plan is never a bad idea.
Okay. Well, it looks like that might be all the questions we got.
Wow.
I'm curious,
Okay.
what got you into this in the first place? What made you a self-called geek?
You know, it started a long time ago where I was working in radio. Right?
Okay.
And I was working with small businesses in newspaper or Yellow Pages. And I kept saying to myself, you know, there's got to be a way to use technology to solve some of these problems, right? And the problems they're having is how do I get in front of more customers that are continually using their cell phones or their computers more? Not everybody remembers an 800 number is easy, right? But they remember that they can search on Google an email address, right? So how do we use technology to solve problems? And the more and more we start using technology and putting data into that technology, then the criminals started coming out. When I saw a business go out of business because of a cyber criminal, when I saw the banks getting regulated, when I saw the amount of money being stolen when nobody knew about it, I'm like, I love to get into cybersecurity because I just want to help, you know, solve that big. And it is, you heard me say, it's the #1 financial risk to a business right now is cybercrime.
Crazy. So it looks like we did have one more come in, and you still have a couple more minutes if anyone
Sure.
is interested in asking another question. How do we do a self-check or cybersecurity evaluation?
Oh, geez, that's like a leading question, isn't it?
I know.
So, you know, with our partnership with Alexander and Haberman, we are offering to do a free, no obligation cyber self-check for anybody that wants it. Anybody watching now, or if this is recorded later, there's a link that you can put inside. I think Caleb has it right now that he can put inside the chat, where you click on it, fill it out. You get to schedule your own time too. So it's not like, you know, having to go back and forth. They click on the link, they're going to get a calendar that they can go and schedule it, and we'll go through and we'll find out where their vulnerabilities are and where those gaps might lie in the user-based portion of it.
Great.
And then again, just so you can see, it's all user-based, as I mentioned before. This is what we do for Alexander and Haberman, obviously, right? For that layered protection. And because of our relationship, we're giving exclusive pricing for anybody that sees this as well. So anybody that sees this, we'll give 35% off of our services, because our other core value is we don't want money to stop you from being protected. Because we do feel that that is one of the areas where small and medium businesses have to decide. Right? They have to decide between being protected or being productive or being compliant, right? And we don't want that fight anymore. We want to find a way that we can get everybody as protected as possible, not allow money to be that deciding factor.
Wonderful. So the link should be available with this presentation, but if there are any questions or the link doesn't work for you, please feel free to email workshops@mnhealthagents.com. Thank you so much to everyone for attending today at Alexander and Haberman's presentation, Top Cybersecurity Secrets.
Yeah.
We went for a little bit of a alliteration of sorts there.
Yeah, I like that.
Our great thanks to Daniel Metcalf and everyone at CyberFin, as well as our team. Aaron and Caleb are in the booths today. We also have Zena, Christian, Jackie, Nicole, Joshua, and Beth. To suggest a topic for future workshops or interact with any of our hosts or guests, please email workshops@mnhealthagents.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest content. Thank you. And as one more time, as a reminder, Alexander and Haberman is a specialty firm focused on assisting with Medicare Advantage, Supplement, and Part D plans, as well as individual and family health insurance on and off exchange, and other benefits including dental, vision, and gap insurance. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.